peaceful, so.
Okay. Are we ready to go? It seems like there's some people aren't here. Should we wait a few minutes?
My boys got to about the end of the rope, and I knew that was going to happen. So,
Okay.
yeah, they're gone, but
Okay.
I'll fill them in.
Okay. Okay. So we're ready to go then? This one is about the ultimate solution to your government. I was Speaker of the House of Representatives for the Republic of Texas for about a year and a half. I currently have a diplomatic position with the Republic of Texas. There are resources available to help you establish your de jure government. Here's my commission. I have the Office of the Charge d'Affaires, signed by the President. So what happened? United States of America is a bankrupt municipal corporation. It's too bad your husband wasn't here for this, eh?
I know. I will ask Mason to show us this section at my house. My husband has a real hard time with the whole corporation thing.
Yeah, if you look here, this is Dun & Bradstreet's webpage, and if you see here, it's United States of America for Corp, right? And if you read here, it says small business solutions. Choose from our selection of business information, credit, and research reports. And so depending on how much you want to pay, will depend on what kind of reports you can get on the small business called United States of America for Corp. And if you think about it, why would it be United States of America for Corp? Okay, and the reason is because the first three were liquidated in bankruptcy. So now we're on number 4, right? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
See? See, right there, 4 Corp. So now look at this. Indiana and Company, and I got to get up close to read some of this stuff. But it says here, 3,460,000 stockholders engaged in providing peace, justice, security, opportunity, health, highways, education, conservation, recreation. Every Indiana citizen is a stockholder in 4,300 school buildings, 960 miles of highways, 34 state parks, 19 state institutions, 4 colleges, state library, okay, and it just keeps going down. It says this certifies that every Indiana citizen, something like a full share of the capital stock of Indiana and Company, okay? So that is taken from the 1936 Indiana annual report in Indiana Gross Income Tax Division, Indiana Department of Treasury Board, okay? So the point is that that's the state of Indiana, okay? And there is a state of Texas with something similar to that, except that, remember here it says every Indiana citizen has a full share. Well, what happens when it goes bankrupt? Okay, those shares become worthless and the creditors become the new owners. Right? Isn't that what happened with GM?
Wow.
Isn't that what happened? So it's effectively a coup d'etat, if you think about it.
Actually, with Obama, it went to the unions instead of the creditors.
Well, whatever. The point is,
It was illegal.
the point is that it's not the people.
Yeah.
What happens when the owner of any corporation goes bankruptcy? The original stock becomes worthless. The creditors becomes the owners. It's effectively a coup d'etat. Who are the creditors? The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. They care about your rights? The courts have ruled on numerous occasions that the primary responsibility of the officers of any corporation is to the owners of the corporation. All courts, cities, towns, etc. of municipal corporations that are subcorporations of the municipal corporation called United States. The creditors of these bankrupt corporations are international bankers, operate exclusively under private international law. Other names for private international law include, but are not limited to, Admiralty Maritime Law, Civil Law, Canon Law, Martial Law. The Magna Carta was signed by the tyrant King John in 1215. In 1213, King John swore allegiance to the Vatican with the concessions to the Pope. I've seen Israeli court cases say that Admiralty Maritime Law goes back to the Babylonian Empire. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. It is a dangerous servant and a terrible master. All governments operate under martial law. It is the responsibility of we the people to keep our government under control. Now, there's 3 kinds of martial law. full martial law proper, and martial law rule. This is taken from that book, that non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by this Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court, and that book was submitted as part of this case, Diet versus Turner. Anyways, and there's going to be a bunch of things here that are taken from that book. Full martial law. Full martial law is a declaration of martial law is issued. Troops are put on the street, used only in time of war, used on foreign country or when actually invaded by a foreign power to put down an armed rebellion. And that's again, non-ratification of the 14th Amendment. Martial law proper. Okay, that's the law of the armed forces. That's when a captain tells a private what to do. It's enforced by court-martials. Martial law rule is the law of necessity and emergency, allows the domestic use of martial law powers used during peace times. Okay, and that's what we're under, is martial law rule. Evidence of martial law rule. Military script is circulated for money. The action of Congress and passage of the first Legal Tender Act was placed distinctly upon the ground of the existing imperative need of the government, and the legal tender clause was urged and adopted as a war measure. Martial law. And that's the U.S. Supreme Court. Evidence of martial law rule. Military script is a forced loan. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They formed a part of the public debt of the United States. Again, the U.S. Supreme Court. And think about it. What's happening is you're forced to loan the government money. Right? That's what it is. I mean, for all these, I was forced to loan the government, money for these Federal Reserve notes that are in my wallet. You see what I'm saying? And that's what's circulating around. It's a promissory note, right? They promised to pay me. Right. I believe that. Since March 9, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. For 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. And that's taken by the U.S. Senate report number 93-549 dated November 19th, 1973. Do you think anything's changed?
Wow.
It's gotten worse.
Yeah, you bet it is. Except that they can't declare full martial law. Think about it, because full martial law, unless there's an armed rebellion, it's got to be an armed rebellion. And remember, that's the key, okay, is the reason the South got crushed is because they went and fired on Fort Sumter. Okay, now they might get some agent provocateurs to create something, okay, but that would be the only type of scenario. But it's got to be an armed rebellion. Okay, so if you're completely peaceful, remember, Guantanamo Bay has been in Cuba for decades. No problem. See what I'm saying? So they could still, the South could have told the U.S. to take a hike and never fired on Fort Sumter, and the South would still be here today. Anyways, so what happened? War is not carried on by arms alone. It is lawful to starve the hostile belligerent, armed or unarmed, so that it leads to a speedier subjection of the enemy. You don't think that's going on? The exercise of martial law jurisdiction within the several states is the usurpation of the common law and subjects the sovereign body to a jurisdiction that has no right to exist within the states. If a citizen acquires the same legal status as those protected by the amendment through the operation of some statutory law of Congress, then said citizen may be brought within the venue of the amendment as a statutory juristic person. By this means, citizens' birthrights become of no effect, and their rights are reduced to the inferior character of statutory civil rights. Okay, and that's again from that court case, and we talked about that earlier. Federal Reserve notes are military script. Federal Reserve notes are legal tender. Federal Reserve notes are forced loans. Anyone who uses them are forced to loan the government money. Federal Reserve notes are promissory notes. When you pay for something with a promissory note, you create a usufruct. That's why on land, they want property taxes, okay? Because it's never paid for. When you buy land, they can presume that you use Federal Reserve notes. See, property taxes came into existence in the Civil War, and that's when they started circulating U.S. Treasury notes. And so the land was not paid for, or they presumed that it wasn't paid for. And so you can defeat it, but there's a procedure you have to follow. If the debt of the United States was paid off, there'd be no paper money in circulation. Evidence of martial law rule. Income tax is collected under military authority. Government seizes money without a court order. Government seizes property without a court order. Government seizes bank accounts without a court order. Okay? So it's all military authority. As we have said, the federal personal income tax is collected under a military venue within a martial law jurisdiction. Federal Reserve notes are military script circulated within a military venue. The problem is the people don't understand how the entire United States is covered by a military venue. Under the Social Security Act, it was brought into existence 10 federal regional areas. These 10 federal regional areas are the same as a military base. It is not unconstitutional to circulate military script on a military base, as the base is considered to be a military venue. Military script cannot circulate in the civil jurisdiction of the several states. To get around this constitutional bar, the Congress, via the Social Security Act, created 10 military venues called federal regional areas. You know, there's a guy that I met when I was in one of my contracts, I think it was when I was in Oklahoma City. And he was telling me how he had been in Korea and how they had military script. And it was money that they were allowed to use and spend on the base and off the base. And he said that they would go and spend it downtown in Korea. And then what would happen is every 6 months or a year or so, they'd change it. And they would give them a period of time that they could convert their script into the new script before the old stuff became worthless. And so what would happen is they had all these Koreans at the gates and stuff like that saying, hey, GI, trade in my script for me and I'll give you 50 cents on the dollar or something like that. You see what I'm saying? Now, if they got caught doing that, they'd get in a whole bunch of trouble. But the point is that's exactly what they're talking about. The problem that Congress realized was that while Congress could restructure the government into agencies into these federal regional areas, the people could not be identified to be within this military venue but by their own consent. The solution was to create another military venue which would trick the people to voluntarily accept recognition that they're within a military venue. Congress solved this problem by creating a zip code.
Wow.
The zip code divides the United States into 10 military venues called national areas. When a citizen receives mail from an agency of the federal government, such as the IRS, and the return address of the federal agency is the district within the regional area the letter was sent from, and on the address of the citizen it was sent to the national area, the zip code in which he received the correspondence from the IRS. In other words, the correspondence is sent from one of the federal regional areas, a military venue, to one of the national areas, another military venue. Taxing districts are established within one of the federal regional areas, which places the collection of taxes under a martial law jurisdiction. Evidence that there's a military occupation. Military script is circulated for money. Police use rank structure of captain, lieutenant, sergeant. Okay, you don't think they're military troops? Police refer to us as civilians. Courts presume everything. Curfew is strictly under martial law jurisdiction. You ever heard of them having a curfew? I've heard of them. Anyways, state regional areas under metro government provide for military venue for peace officers to enforce martial law jurisdiction. Now, how many times do you see, especially the Dallas police? You know, the Dallas police actually patrol a lot of different cities, and that's metro police is what that is, and that's what they're talking about right here. State regional police, regional areas under metro government. Okay, and they do this in Canada as well. Okay, like for example, the Toronto Metro Police Department. Okay, this is a war over the intrusion of civil law upon common law. The court in Diamond v. Harris calls civil law superior equity. It is difficult to see how the courts of this state are to ignore the common law as a rule of decision when it is made so by statute and adopt the civil law even though it had the merit of superior equity.